Welcome to the Labrador podcast from Tales of Success Labrador Training. Hello and welcome back to the Labrador podcast. I'm Vicky, and today we're going to be scratching the surface of a very big topic, which is lead walking. If you have ever found yourself being dragged down the street by your Labrador, maybe tripped over as they're sniffing every lamppost or hedgerow that they can find, or if you are absolutely dreading going on a walk because you know you're going to be almost treated like a dead weight at the end of the lead, you're definitely not alone. It really is a huge problem for many Labrador owners. And many of us struggle with loose lead walking. I would say it's the subject that I get most training inquiries about here at Tales of Success Labrador Training. And often the biggest reason for lead walking going wrong is something that actually we don't think about that often. And it's positioning. It's where we position the dog and where we allow the dog to walk. So lead walking isn't just about stopping the pulling. Of course, that's the end result that we want. It's about how and where your dog walks. And once we've figured that out and we find the best place for them to be, that really can make all the difference to lead walking. So in today's episode, I'm going to talk about that. We're going to be talking about why position really is everything when it comes to lead walking. We'll look at what happens when your dog walks ahead and why that can start to cause you some problems. We'll talk about the benefits of having a defined walking position for your dog so that actually you can start walking together as a team. And we'll also look at some practical steps that you can take to improve your lead walking right away. So let's get into it. First of all, let's talk about the struggles that so many Labrador owners face. Our first struggle might be that your dog pulls like a steam train from the very second that the lead is clipped on. Another struggle could be that they seem to zigzag or weave across your path on the pavement and trip you up or tie you up in knots with that lead. Another struggle could be that you feel like every lamppost, tree or smell just becomes a reason for your dog to stop and sniff or lunge towards it. Or another struggle that you might be facing is that you feel like you're actually not part of your dog's walk. You're just simply holding on for dear life at the end of the lead. If any of those things sound familiar, I'll bet you've already tried at least 2 different collars, leads or head collars, slip leads, any other gadget that you can find. You've probably tried all those things in the hope that it will solve your problem. But the truth is, unfortunately, none of them will truly fix the issue. And that's simply because equipment alone will not teach your dog how to walk properly or how to walk nicely on any lead. Equipment, of course, can help. Finding the right piece of equipment for you will definitely help. But unless you consistently do the right stuff at the right time in the right place, and you do that really consistently day in, day out, you're very unlikely to get the desired result that you want quickly. So chances are I've never met you or your Labrador, but there's quite a high probability that if your dog is doing any of those undesirable things that I've just mentioned, the real issue that's causing the problem is probably their positioning in relation to you. If your Labrador is up ahead of you on a tight or even a loose lead, they're naturally going to get it wrong at some point. And that comes down to the fact that they can't see you. They're detached from you. They're maybe 2 foot, 3 foot, 6 foot ahead of you on that longer line. They're likely to pull at some point. They're probably going to be following their nose. They're likely to zigzag. It's possible that they will become distracted and they will start to feel disconnected from you. And if you've got a nervous, an anxious or reactive dog, that is even worse. Because now when you've got your dog up ahead of you, they're actually going solo. They're meeting every situation first. If the situation that they're in causes them to be excited, fearful, anxious, nervous, or a whole host of other feelings, they're going to be going through it alone. There's that split second where they encounter it and they're in charge. They've got to deal with it and cope with everything that's thrown their way. And they're going to be doing that without your guidance or support because actually you're 1, 2, 3, 4 foot behind them. Whereas if we've got them walking by your side, you can then encounter things together. So you're going to be dealing with every situation that you come across as a bit of a team. So let's break it down a little bit more and try and understand why this happens and what we can do about it. So on this subject of positioning and where we have our dog walk, I want you to think about it this way. If your dog walks ahead of you, they've got no idea what's coming next. they are left to make all the decisions. They're going to be deciding where to go, how fast to walk, when to stop, who to say hello to, who to bark at, what to sniff, and a whole host of other things that they have to think about because they're up ahead going first. And this means you're more likely to experience pulling, frustration, and you, as the handler that's 2, 3, 4 foot behind them, have a total lack of connection with your dog that's up ahead. Whereas if we have our dog walking beside you, they can start to take guidance from you. They can watch your leg, they can match your pace, they can match your direction, and they know exactly where they should be as you make the decisions and you step in to keep them safe if you need to. And by changing the position of the dog, it gives you much more control. It's simply just being able to show them that you're there to work with them rather than just, as I've mentioned earlier, the dead weight that's just hanging onto the lead behind them. And actually, it's no different from you driving a car. You would not try driving from the back seat because it wouldn't go well. You'd probably crash very quickly. You need to be in the driver's seat when you're driving. You need to have full control. And it's where you should be to give your dog that protection and clear direction that they need for a comfortable, stress-free walk. So if we imagine that your dog is now in a position that's by your side, that allows them to follow your lead instead of making up their own rules. It allows them to match your speed much easier, which in turn will reduce the chances of them pulling. It's more likely that they will feel supported in unfamiliar or stressful situations, knowing that actually they've got their favourite human right there beside them. It makes it easier for them to stay engaged with you rather than becoming distracted by everything else around them. So I've told you a little bit about the problems of having your dog up ahead and what can go wrong. I've explained a little bit about how it can be better to have them by your side, but we need to figure out ourselves what actually is the best position to have them in. And I'm a real firm believer that your dog, your rules. I can advise you, but actually ultimately it comes down to you and what works for you, your dog and your situation. So it's very much going to come down to your preference. But my recommendation to you is that you choose a position that is directly beside one of your legs. So for me, my dogs, when I ask them to walk nice on a lead, do not need to be glued to your leg. This is not award-winning heel work we're looking at. We're looking at really anything within a meter of my leg is good. So if I can visualize a circle to the left of my left leg, that's where I want my dog to be. And when I walk my Labrador on a lead, she knows that the only place that she's allowed to walk when she's on a lead is by my left leg, and there are no exceptions. Now, that might seem a bit inflexible that I say no exceptions, but this means there's never any confusion. She doesn't have to try and figure out what the heck I'm asking her to do each time we go out for a walk. She knows that whether I walk her, whether someone else walks her, her spot to be is by the left leg. And that means she's got a lot less to think about. It becomes a very natural thing for her. So my rule is simple. My dog must always be to the left of my leg, within a meter, and definitely not ahead of me. So I'm not looking for a rigid heel position, just a comfortable, neutral position where we can start to move together as a team. If this feels like something that you would like to give a try, and I strongly recommend you do, I'd like to guide you through 5 steps that I recommend. And these are steps that I recommend you make part of every single dog walk that you do moving forward without fail. And if you do these consistently for every single dog walk, I promise you, you will start to see some progress. So I'm going to go through them one step at a time. Let's start off with step number 1. Feel free to make a note of these if it's going to be helpful. First step is to choose a walking zone. This is where you decide where you want your dog to walk. Your dog, your rules. But again, going back to my recommendation, this really should be beside you, not ahead of you. And it could be on your left or right leg. It really doesn't matter. It will come down to your own personal preference, but you must be consistent. The position that you want your dog to walk in should absolutely be reinforced on every single walk, every time your dog goes out, and with every single person that's going to walk them. Step number 2, we need to make sure that we're rewarding the correct position. So once you've chosen your walking zone that you want your dog to be in every single walk, we need to make sure they understand it's really beneficial to be there. So every time your dog walks in the correct spot, you need to let them know that they are doing the absolute best thing ever. Doesn't matter how you do that, because it will be something that's unique to your dog. So you could use treats, you could use praise, you could use a bit of fuss or some kind words, whatever it is that motivates your dog. The biggest thing to remember with praise and rewards is it should be calm, because the last thing we want is to excite our dogs too much and have this out of control dog that's overexcited because we've just given them the best treat ever and then they run ahead of you again. So it's calm, confident praise or treats or fuss or attention that keeps it nice and calm and makes them want to just stick with you a little bit longer. Moving on to step 3, we need to also let our dog know when they're getting it wrong. So we've chosen our spot we want them to walk in. We're going to reward them when they get it right, but when they get it wrong, we must let them know. So if your dog surges ahead or falls out of the position that you've chosen for them, you're going to have to stop immediately. So they know that when they're in the wrong position, the walk comes to an immediate end. It's a temporary end. It doesn't mean pack up and go home. It just means keep your feet still. You need to let them know they've got it wrong. And that might be with a gentle bit of lead pressure. It might be you saying the word no or correcting them verbally, whatever works for your dog. We all have ways to congratulate our dogs, and we should all have ways to tell them when they've got it wrong. Don't feel bad about doing this. We're not looking at physical punishment, but we do need a way to tell them actually they've got it wrong. We're going to reset them. We're going to put them back into that chosen position. And then we go through the process again. We start walking. We acknowledge and reward when they're in the right spot, and we correct them when they're in the wrong spot. And then we can move on to step number 4. So again, just to recap the previous steps, we choose our position, we reward the right position, we correct the wrong position. Step 4 is we want to be unpredictable to keep them engaged. So during your training, during your walk, if your dog stops listening or they get distracted, you need to do something really weird and wonderful. And that usually comes in the form of changing direction. As soon as it starts going wrong or we lose that connection, turn around and walk in a new direction very, very quickly. Change your pace and start to become unpredictable to your dog. When you start to become unpredictable, your dog is probably going to think you're much more interesting, which will encourage them to follow. And when you become unpredictable with your speed, your direction, and the way that you're walking, this is going to keep them focused on you rather than all the distractions in the environment. And then we're going to go on to step 5. We need to practice in low distraction areas first. So once we've got our position sorted, we reward the right position, we correct the wrong position, we keep it unpredictable. Step 5 is we need to practice it where our Labradors are going to be successful. So low distraction areas first. Start in a quiet area. Could be your home, could be your garden or a quiet street, before you expect them to be really successful in a busy dog park. If lead walking is a problem for you, dedicate time to get it right in the quietest areas that you can find, and really very gradually start to take it to more challenging places. And if that means going backwards and forwards in the street or an empty car park for an hour, that's what you're going to have to do. So let's give you a little recap on those 5 steps. So we need you to choose a position for your dog to walk in and stick with it. You're going to reward your dog for being in the correct position. And you're also going to reset them when it goes wrong. Be unpredictable to keep them engaged with you, and practice in low distraction areas and only progress when they get it right. And finally, on that point, I can't emphasize enough that consistency is key. The more you reinforce the right position, the more you practice and the fewer opportunities you give your dog to get it wrong, the more natural it's going to become and the more of a habit it will become for your Labrador. I think as well, it's only right that I let you know about some of the most common mistakes that I see too, because we're all human. Most people will make mistakes, and that is really, really normal. Dog training isn't just about training the dog. It's making sure that as humans are as well trained as the dogs that we're hoping to achieve. We want to be making sure we're doing things at the right time, in the right place to give our dogs the best chance of success. So, as I said, none of us are perfect, but keep these in the back of your mind so you're less likely to make these mistakes too. So, mistake number one with lead walking positioning is people always using a lead that has constant tension in it. If the lead that is connected to your dog is always tight, your dog will never learn how to walk on a loose lead because we're not giving them an opportunity to practice it. So we've got to loosen the leads and make sure we reward the heck out of them when it stays slack, but be prepared to correct them when it goes wrong. Mistake number two is only using rewards for training or only using corrections for training. So instead of just correcting them when they pull or just rewarding when they get it right, we should actually make sure we consistently use a very healthy mix of both. And when we use rewards and corrections, this really helps your dog understand which of their behaviours gets which results. You're essentially giving them all of the information out there so that they can start making the best possible choice for them and making the best possible choice to get them the best result. Mistake number three is skipping practice sessions. Expecting your Labrador to suddenly master loose lead walking after one training session or even one training session a week simply will not work. You have to make this your routine. It has to become your habit, your new normal. If up until now your dog has been allowed to practice pulling head on a lead for, let's say, 6 months, a year, 2 years, I bet they've become really, really good at it. It's something they've practiced probably every day for that amount of time. So you're going to need to practice daily and stick with it to make this their new habit. You've got a lot of unpicking to do, but it's absolutely possible to achieve it, particularly if you remember to practice in the low distraction areas first. And our final mistake, mistake number 4, is the humans not being consistent. If you go out for a dog walk and sometimes you allow pulling and sometimes you don't, your Labrador is going to be confused. They just won't understand the rules of the game that you're playing. If you sometimes allow your dog on the right, sometimes on the left, sometimes ahead, again, your dog simply won't understand the rules of the game that you're playing. If you walk the dog on the left and then someone else walks them on the right, again, your dog won't understand the rules of the game that you're playing. You get the gist of this, right? You need to pick a side and you must be consistent to allow your dog to understand the rules of the game. If we're not doing that, we are being totally unfair to our dog who doesn't understand our language. They're just trying to figure out what gets great results. And if we're being unclear with that, your dog will not get it. So that's a little bit about positioning, why it's so important and how to start achieving it. And I hope in that podcast episode, there has been something that you can take away and get to work on right away. I don't want people to feel disheartened and think that lead walking needs to be frustrating forever. You can absolutely make changes to the rules at any age of dog. So I train dogs from 8 weeks old, the eldest being 13 years old. So there's always things that we can change to make things better. This really is one of the things you want to look at straight away when it comes to lead walking to help you. Keep in the back of your mind as a result of this podcast episode that position is everything. If you encourage your Labrador to walk in the correct spot, pulling will definitely reduce naturally. When you've got your dog by your side, you're walking as a team and you as the human, the carer, the guide are right there to give your dog some direction, some guidance and support. If you found this episode helpful and want to look into the subject a little more, you can find some social posts on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And the handle on all platforms is at Tails Success. I'd be really grateful if you could share this episode with a fellow Labrador owner and also tag me in your socials so I can see the progress you're making with your positioning and loose lead walking. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time on the Labrador podcast. Thanks for joining us. Find out more by checking out tailsofsuccess.com or search at Tails Success on your social channels.